Hello there. Welcome back to the channel. So I'm continuing from episode 7, part 7. I'm calling them episodes to my story time about how God saved me from the attacks of witchcraft and destiny swapping for 9.5 years. Yeah, it was pretty long, but these witches wouldn't let up. So after arriving and checking in at my hotel, I slept very late that day because I was just tired. Like I mentioned before in earlier videos, that I was on the road for longer than expected because it was raining. Once I got like 2 states over, it was just pouring down raining, so I had to keep stopping. And I was, a little concerned about, the witchcraft that had been done, like the spell work that had caused me to pass out from time to time. And so I was concerned about driving long distance alone and something happening. So anytime I felt faint, I decided to just, pull over either on the highway or, rest area. So, but I slept late that day after arriving. This was during the pandemic. Like I got on the road. Once on the road, I found out that everything became locked down like the world. So uh, I slept so late. When I woke up, I jumped up and grabbed my laptop, wondering if anyone had responded to my emails. I had mentioned previously that I kept emailing the hiring managers over at this for this job opportunity. Once I was on the road and I found out that everything had went into lockdown, and I was on my way in to start my job. So I just sat up in the bed and turned on the TV just to see what the goings ons were. And it just, it hit me hard right then that we were in this full lockdown. I was hungry and worried that I might not have a job anymore and like that I may have to return back to the state that I left, which I surrendered the keys and not really wanting to go back to that apartment because, I felt like it was haunted. Like the demons and the unclean spirits that took over, like they were very territorial. I had to live in that for a while, and so I have family there in my hometown, lots of family. It's my mother's home state. That's where she was born and raised. And so, but I wasn't that acquainted with many of them. I didn't keep in touch until the last couple of years, or maybe, yeah, just like my mother passed away 2017. And, I was getting reacquainted with a lot of them, at the funeral. So I had always been treated like the black sheep anyway. That's why, or one of the reasons why I left, at an early age, and hadn't returned. Um, I've been estranged from my immediate family as well, like my siblings and even my mother before she passed away. So she was a single mom. I hadn't really been in touch with my dad either. So my family was very toxic. So I just, wanted peace in my life. And at an earlier age, I knew that that's what I needed. And so in order to heal from all the things that I have been through. So I mostly heard from them only when like someone passed away. And it's not funny, but yeah, that was when I get the phone call. So whenever I received a phone call, I saw a familiar number or I got a voicemail, I was like, to myself, who's passed away now? And that was it. There was no real genuine relationships. And my sister and I tried to keep a relationship, long distance through FaceTime and phone calls, just trying to, stay in touch with her to remain, close with her children. And so I had no real intention of reaching out now, just, because it was a pandemic. I didn't want anyone thinking I just, I'm coming down now because I'm fleeing from the state that I was in, because of the pandemic. I was prepared to stay in the hotel. I had some savings, and just until I found out what was going on, like with this onboard, like was I gonna onboard or not? Otherwise, then I make my decision of the move that I was going to make next. And as I mentioned in the last video, I eventually got dressed and drove into town trying to find food. I only had a pack of peanuts and some chips and a few bottles of water, maybe an apple or something from the drive in. So I was mainly curious on if the organization had left any information posted on the building or not. I was just trying to figure things out. I was trying to stay and remain hopeful, and I really didn't want to go back. It just felt good to be home. The quality of life is really good, and just felt good. Even under all my unusual circumstances, I just felt like, this is where I was supposed to be. And I'm thinking I'm going to run away from what was happening there. So, but no one was in sight once I arrived to the building downtown, and the roads were empty. As I was inching my way there, I was, you know, coming from a city where the pandemic had initially hit first. My license plates indicated that. They were situated on the front of my vehicle and the back. So I was afraid that people would see it and like I would be turned away everywhere because everyone was in panic mode at the time. But after sitting in my car, just bawling my eyes out, it was still raining very heavy, and it was raining while I was traveling, and I was just sitting there crying. I didn't know what to do. Like all these turn of events, just like it just kept spiraling down. So I, was already feeling a bit frail. I'd started losing weight again, and I had developed like these huge bags under my eyes due to lack of sleep. And, it took emotional toll what I was experiencing for the last couple of years. And so um, I just headed back to the hotel, and I was there for about a week. And my health seemed to take a turn for the worse. I was just feeling unwell and suffering in silence and didn't know what to do. I felt like things were moving around in my body, like I can literally feel something moving in my body, like it just. And so I'm thinking maybe it was something I ate, like I got some kind of food poisoning or I caught a parasite. I didn't know what was going on. I was a little feverish, and I just didn't know. And I felt like, I needed to get some, seek some professional help. This stuff was moving in my stomach and my pelvic area. And I started to feel things moving down like up and down my legs and my arms. And, I tried going to the emergency room. And when I was explaining what was happening, they were looking at me like I was crazy, like I needed like to speak to a psychiatrist again, or like just like they were asking me like these unusual questions. It was really bad. And so they wouldn't really see me, or unless I was experiencing like shortness of breath at that time or any COVID like symptoms. They like stopped me right there at the front desk. I forget what you call that, and asking me these questions, but just turned me around and I couldn't be seen. So I just kept praying, and I just started to research how I can keep my immune system intact, and like researching things that combats like parasites and things of that nature. And just changed my diet, just started eating incredibly healthy. And so, I knew that these feelings that I was experiencing weren't normal, But finally, I did receive an email from Human Resources and stating that I would be onboarding and that we would be working, like, would be in a teleworking environment. The manager just mentioned that specifically my devices of my phone and laptop, they had already been sent to my sister's address, which, that I had used that address during my application process. And so I should be looking out for it via FedEx. And so I'm like, oh my God, like I immediately just reached out to my sister again, thinking that maybe she'll answer and she's over whatever it is that she was going through, maybe, but I didn't get a response. And so I just really got worried, and concerned. I was feeling hurt as well, wondering why she was, avoiding me, and like, especially knowing that the world is in this pandemic and I had nowhere to go. She knew that I like surrendered my keys to my place, and the plan was to stay with her. I just felt like she was being very mean spirited, and it was unprovoked. I didn't understand it at the time. Again, all this witchcraft stuff, I didn't, I've never experienced anything like this. I wasn't in my word the way I was supposed to. I was just starting to build a relationship with the Lord. And so I didn't really know and understand that you can move all over the world if you want, to, but those spirits will follow you. They don't, you know, and like people have your, any articles or items of yours that carry your DNA. These are curses and spells. This is energy, so I I really didn't know what at the time had changed between us. I didn't know had I said something, wrong unintentionally. I was just in shock at the time, that this was happening. I didn't realize that I was dealing with spirits of rejection and monitoring spirits affecting every area of my life, including, causing strife between me and my family now, and friends, you know, especially since they might already carry some sort of ill feelings toward me. It's easy for for them to be compromised by the devil or the enemy against, me. And at the time, I wasn't aware of this witchcraft, that it was still operating in my life. Yeah, it took me many years of, just reading, not to read the entire Bible, it didn't take that long, but researching and just really, coming to an understanding about what was happening and how and why these things could take place in your life. Watching a lot of these deliverance ministries and people who really know about this stuff, like over in Africa, Haiti, and like the Latin countries, and so. Yeah, I realized I wasn't losing my sanity. Many others had, shared similar experiences through, so through watching and learning more about this stuff, I developed a strong will to just live and learn more and push through the fall. Because, I didn't just want to live, and I didn't want to have a premature death either. I knew something was wrong, and like I really needed, and what it all boils down to, you need God, especially when you're dealing with these type of, this is spiritual, you can't fight this on your own. You need the Lord, but you got to be out of sin, you really do. And so yeah, I was being pursued not only by a spirit of rejection, but also spirits of abandonment. That's why people were avoiding me and just like didn't care. It was a spirit that was taking place and operating and causing these dynamics. And a spirit of poverty, because that's where, why I was jumping from job to job, always some problems on the job, an instance things will shift and people will be against me, it was just weird, and I'm like, I get at this age in the game, trying to focus on retirement, and then these things start happening. But what it was is this witch didn't want me to have anything, no job, no friends, no family, wanted me to be secluded in isolation, in fear, because fear set the gates for this stuff to, take place. And her motives was driven by envy and greed. And so eventually I just discovered too that she was a high ranking witch, from a long line of warlocks and witches in her family. They were heavily rooted in like this occult practices, and this is what they do for financial gain. Many people who are aware of these things succumb to spells or are not. They succumb, and a lot of them, like, pass away, and this is because you're still living, have some sin, not repentive, living a sinful lifestyle. And so they perish because of lack of knowledge. And most of the time, these witches, they want to, they do this to cause mental illness, for people to look at you like something, is not unhealthy, and or for people to look at you if something is wrong with you in a negative light. And not everyone is strong enough to fight through this stuff. And if people are not, walking in Christ like lifestyles, they don't see this stuff, they don't know, they don't understand it, and so all they're looking at is the fleshly part, the physical, not by the spiritual, so at this time, I had been dealing with this stuff for a few years, maybe more than a few, but still had an enormous amount of lack of understanding. I was still learning. And I didn't have a clue that this woman was trying to swap destinies with me. Yes, swap my destiny. I didn't even realize that was a real thing, but it is a real thing. She wanted my life. That's why she used her evil altars, the dark altars, um, that they put your photos, they get your photos from these platforms. That's why it's not good to be posting all your photos and things like your movements and like where you live and, all that stuff, because you're just giving them the information. People sometimes just be watching to just watch your life. They not, um, they're preying on your downfall. They're not, clapping for you, and so, and, this is how she used these monitoring spirits to monitor me, and this is why she was mimicking me, like mimicking my personality and character. I used to think that was just weird. Like, was it me? But is she really doing that? Even my son noticed that. And it was just weird. But yeah, not only is she a witch, she's a narcissist. And so it's just even worse. Yeah, the plan was to monitor me, learn everything about me, to become me, to like, what did they call it? Uh, it's a name for it. I forget. It'll come to me later. But yeah, and then to eliminate me. And this was like what I later referred to as the roots 5.0, because I had only heard of these such things in the context of root work from the South, from growing up. You hear like my big mama and my grandmother and my mom, things you hear in the family, like somebody put some roots on someone. I didn't really pay any attention or think that would ever happen to me. I don't go around bothering anybody. I mind my business and drink my water and do my thing, but you don't have to do anything to people. You got some evil people out here. But I just never thought it would happen to me, especially for no apparent reason. I hadn't done anything to this young lady. We were just casual neighbors, and You have to be careful of the food you eat, because I did accept a slice of cake from her once for one of the boys, her kid's birthday party. And, I started dreaming about people trying to feed me food and, things of that nature. And so, yeah, all of this stuff I'm finding out later on, that, yeah, that's a no-no. That's just the way they, curses, and so anyway, I decided to contact my niece, referring to my devices, to see if she could go over her mother's house, my sister's, to watch for my packages. And at that point, I didn't know what she was capable of doing, my sister. I didn't want her to sabotage anything for me, like as far as my job, because now I'm here, I have to get stable and, do what I need to do as far as surviving and providing for myself. And when my niece visited, the package hadn't been delivered yet. So the next day she called and said my sister had denied receiving the package. And I found out later on that she said that that person doesn't live there. And I was just like, why is she doing all of this? It just didn't make any sense. And I just couldn't understand it. And just felt very disappointed and like why she would treat me like that. And so I had to reach out to the job to inform them of the change in my circumstances. And thankfully, the Lord was still providing for me. Like everything was still, falling into place. I was worried and not realizing that He was there all the time. He's just been so good to me throughout this whole term. But this was all a lesson for me, breaking generational curses. And I didn't know, I answered the call unknowingly, and, but yeah, it was a lot. I was able to work from, they rerouted the package, and like I received the devices at the hotel. And so I was able to work from the lounge area and my room, which had a desk. So it was all good. So I felt relieved at this point. I could now have a permanent position, which made me comfortable enough to start looking for a place of my own to sign a lease contract. I knew I could afford it now. And the enemy be wanting to keep you in fear so that you'll undermine yourself and stay away from your destiny. With every loss you experience, those who wish to do you harm are rewarded, because they use these setbacks to ensnare you and take your soul for Satan. He doesn't, you know, um, he doesn't want you to step into your purpose, So these witches, it makes them feel good too, because they feel like they have all this power and control, but again, they get rewarded. Like, it's a such thing as spiritual robbery. I kept taking loss, like my car, you know, was getting damaged, and like I have to out of pocket $3,000 in addition to, my insurance. And um, whatever you have to pay, that's what they have went to their altars to request. So yeah, it's weird, and but it's a real thing. And I'm just going to stop right here, and I'll there's a lot more. And these things that were in my body started to like come out of me, and like it just horrific. So in episode 9, I'll go there, um, go deeper, because it's so much more. It just got even scarier. And I just like suffered in silence and didn't share it with anyone. So may God continue to bless you all, protect you, and keep you safe, and comfort you and your loved ones. Okay? Please join me in part 9, episode 9 of How God Saved Me from the Attacks of Witchcraft and My Neighbor Was a Witch. Have a good one. Bye bye.